You won't believe what happened to us one night, a night that started like any other, but quickly spiraled into a nightmare. It all began when my husband and I were confronted by what looked like cops, but turned out to be fake HOA enforcers. They weren't wearing real badges, but they acted like they had the authority to control everything on our street. The situation escalated so fast that before I knew it, my husband was being pinned against our gate, completely helpless. I could see the fear in his eyes, and something inside me snapped. I wasn't about to let them get away with it. I reached for my Glock 19, not to cause trouble, but to protect my family. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Every second felt like an hour as I faced those imposters, unsure what would happen next. These fake HOA cops had no right to intimidate us, yet there we were, caught in a terrifying standoff in our own neighborhood. This story isn't just about guns or confrontations. It's about what happens when power is abused by people who shouldn't have it, and how far a person will go to defend their loved ones. You'll hear every detail, the fear, the chaos, the choices we had to make in those split seconds. But here's the thing. This isn't a simple good guys versus bad guys story. There's more to this than meets the eye. What really happened that night is going to shock you. And the aftermath has left us questioning everything about safety and trust in our community. Stick around, because in the next part, I'll share exactly what happened after I emptied the Glock and how that night changed our lives forever. You won't want to miss it. The whole ordeal didn't just come out of nowhere. For weeks before that night, we'd noticed strange things happening around our neighborhood. Unmarked vehicles cruising slowly down the streets, men in plain clothes showing up at odd hours, and rumors swirling about a new HOA patrol that nobody had really agreed to. At first, we thought it was just some overzealous security trying to keep the area safe. But it quickly felt more like intimidation than protection. My husband and I tried to stay out of it, hoping it would blow over. But it didn't. The fake HOA cops were clever. They dressed like law enforcement, carried gear that looked real, and spoke with a confidence that made it hard to challenge them. Neighbors whispered about how these so-called officers had been stopping people, asking questions, and even threatening to tow cars or fine residents for the smallest things. It felt like our community was under siege from within, but no one knew who exactly was behind this or what their real motives were. That night, when my husband came home late from work, he saw one of those vehicles blocking our driveway. The men jumped out before he could even park and started accusing him of trespassing on HOA property, a claim that made no sense because this was our home. Things escalated fast. They grabbed him, pushed him up against the gate, and acted like they were in charge of everything. I was inside, watching through the window, heart pounding, unsure if I should call the police or do something else. I knew these weren't real cops. They had the power to ruin our lives if we didn't stand our ground. My hands shook as I grabbed my Glock 19, knowing this moment could change everything. What they wanted from us and why was still a mystery. And as I stepped outside, ready to confront them, I had no idea how far this would go or what the consequences would be. As I stood there, holding my Glock 19, every instinct screamed at me to protect my husband, but also to stay calm. The men, acting as fake HOA cops, didn't just intimidate us, they unsettled the whole neighborhood. I had heard stories from others about strange patrols showing up unexpectedly, questioning people, and even trying to enforce rules that didn't officially exist. Some neighbors were too scared to speak out, while others had tried reporting the incidents to the real police, but were told it was a civil matter or not a priority. It felt like a twisted power play unfolding right in front of us. My husband, pinned against the gate, kept whispering for me to back off, telling me not to make things worse. But how could I? Those men were overstepping every boundary, acting like they owned the place. Their presence alone was a threat, and when they started pushing and shouting, I knew this wasn't just about parking or HOA rules anymore. It was about control, fear, and maybe something deeper no one wanted to admit. There was also the matter of the HOA itself. Officially, it was supposed to be a community-run group focused on maintenance and safety. But lately, rumors spread that a small group had taken control, using fake security as a way to enforce their will and silence anyone who questioned them. I had even heard whispers about money, threats, and personal grudges disguised as community enforcement. What if this was more than just a neighborhood dispute? What if something dark was happening behind closed doors? While I faced those men, part of me wondered if any real help would come if things spiraled out of control. We were isolated, the line between right and wrong blurred by those wearing badges that didn't mean a thing. The weight of uncertainty pressed down hard. I didn't know what they wanted exactly or how far they were willing to go, but I knew I couldn't let them break us. The next moments would decide everything, and there was no turning back. The air was thick with tension as I stepped closer. The Glock 19 steady in my hands, even though my heart was pounding like thunder. The fake HOA men glared at me with a mix of surprise and defiance, but they didn't back down. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a battle for control, safety, and truth in our own neighborhood. Every second stretched out painfully, as if the world was holding its breath. My husband was still pinned against the gate, his face pale, but his eyes locked on mine, silently begging me to be careful. The men had no right to treat him that way, yet they acted like they were above the law. The more I looked at them, the more I saw the cracks in their acts, the fake badges, the mismatched uniforms. But their aggression was real, and that scared me more than anything. What if they were willing to cross a line no one should ever cross? Neighbors peeked nervously from behind curtains, some clutching their phones, unsure whether to call the real police or stay silent. The street felt like a trap, the fake HOA's unofficial authority hanging heavy like a storm ready to break. I thought about the countless warnings we'd all ignored, the whispers of corruption and fear that had grown louder but never quite reached the surface until now. Suddenly, one of the men took a step forward, his hand twitching near his belt, and everything inside me screamed to act. The seconds sped up. The world narrowed to just the three of us and the threat looming inches away. The Glock was my last line of defense, my way of protecting the man I love and the home we fought so hard to keep safe. I gripped it tighter, my breath shallow, knowing that whatever happened next could change everything: our lives, our neighborhood, and the truth that had been buried for too long. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any worse, everything shifted in a way I never saw coming. As one of the men reached again toward his belt, suddenly a voice rang out from behind them, calm but authoritative. It was a real police officer stepping into the scene with a badge flashing under the streetlight. I froze, unsure whether relief should wash over me or caution take its place. The fake HOA cops stiffened, their confident facades cracking for the first time. But then came the shock. The officer didn't immediately rush to our side. Instead, he stared at my husband and me, then nodded toward the fake officers in a way that felt less like disapproval and more like knowing agreement. My mind raced. Was the real police officer somehow connected to these imposters? Was there a deeper web of control and corruption entangling not just our neighborhood, but law enforcement too? The line between right and wrong blurred even more, and I realized this was bigger than a simple HOA dispute. Our community's safety wasn't just threatened by fake enforcers, seemed to be compromised at every level. My husband's face mirrored my shock and confusion. The fake HOA men looked more aggressive now, fueled by the unexpected reinforcement. I tightened my grip on my Glock 19, realizing this wasn't just about protecting ourselves anymore. It was about standing up against a hidden system of power that had been quietly taking over our lives. Neighbors watching from their windows whispered in disbelief, some calling out for help, others too afraid to intervene. The stakes were higher than ever, and the peaceful street we once knew was now a battleground where trust was shattered and danger lurked around every corner. Whatever happened next would expose secrets no one was ready for, and I knew this fight was far from over. The tension exploded in an instant. The fake HOA men lunged toward us, but the real officer stepped forward, raising his hands to stop them. "Drop everything," he ordered sharply. But then, in a sudden move I never expected, one of the imposters pulled a gun not at us, but aimed directly at the officer. Time seemed to freeze. I barely had a moment to react before I pulled the trigger on my Glock 19. The shot rang out, echoing through the quiet street, and the man collapsed. Chaos erupted. The other fake officers scrambled, panic in their eyes, as they realized their control was slipping. The real police backup arrived moments later, sirens blazing, and everything shifted again. We were finally safe. Sword of the truth came out. Fast. The fake HOA enforcers were part of a corrupt scheme, using intimidation and fear to push neighbors out and grab control of the community for profit. Worse, the officer who arrived wasn't entirely clean either. Some connections ran deeper than anyone imagined. Tangled in a web of corruption that had poisoned the system, my husband and I stood together, shaken but unbroken. We had fought for our home, our safety, and our truth. The fake enforcers were arrested, and investigations began, but the neighborhood would never be the same. The victory felt hollow in some ways, shadowed by the discovery of how far the corruption went. Just when we thought the nightmare was over, a chilling message arrived. An anonymous note slipped under our door. It wasn't a threat, but a warning. "You've only scratched the surface. Watch your backs." The fight for our community wasn't done. It was just beginning. In the days that followed, the neighborhood was filled with a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. The fake HOA enforcers were gone, arrested and facing charges, but the damage they caused lingered in the air. People talked more openly now about the intimidation and fear they'd lived with for months. And for the first time, some neighbors felt empowered to speak up and demand real accountability. My husband and I became quiet voices in that movement, sharing our story to remind everyone that standing up against corruption isn't easy. But it's necessary. The investigation revealed just how deeply the scheme was woven into the communities, leadership, and even parts of local law enforcement. It was a harsh wake-up call that trust can be broken in the places you least expect. And that vigilance is key to keeping a neighborhood safe. But we also saw hope, people coming together, supporting each other, and rebuilding what had been broken. On a personal level, the experience changed us. Holding that Glock 19 in my hands during the most intense moments taught me about the weight of responsibility and the strength found in protecting what matters most. My husband's calm in the chaos reminded me that courage comes in many forms. Together, we learned that safety isn't just about rules or uniforms. It's about community, honesty, standing firm when it counts. Though the warning note we received after the arrests was unsettling, we refused to let fear control us. Instead, it fueled our determination to keep fighting for a neighborhood where everyone feels secure and respected. Our story is a reminder that sometimes the biggest threats come from within, and facing them takes bravery. But in the end, standing up for truth and justice is what protects us all.